In 2020, the world stood still as the COVID-19 pandemic swept across the globe. Lockdowns emptied the world's greatest cities. Hospitals collapsed under an endless wave of critical patients. Millions of lives vanished in a matter of months, leaving behind empty streets, paralyzed economies, and a profound fear of an invisible killer. For nearly 2 years, human civilization froze until science finally delivered vaccines, allowing us to slowly step back into normal life. It felt like the ultimate test of modern human endurance. But COVID-19 was not the most terrifying biological nightmare humanity has ever faced. 7 centuries ago, a far more ruthless plague swept across the globe. It didn't just overload hospitals, it erased half of human civilization. Yet the most disturbing part of that medieval catastrophe isn't how many millions died in the mud. It is what happened to the biological code of the people who survived. While vaccines saved us from COVID-19 today, our ancestors in 1348 had no modern medicine. To survive, their bodies were forced to evolve on the spot. Right now, millions of people around the world are battling painful, inexplicable autoimmune conditions like Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and lupus. Modern medicine blamed diet, stress, and pollution. But the true culprit is a secret buried deep inside your blood, a brutal biological armor forged in medieval plague pits that saved your ancestors from literal extinction, but left behind a secret curse firing off inside human bodies today. To understand how a medieval tragedy rewired your biology, you have to travel back to the summer of 1348. The city of London had become an open-air graveyard. A microscopic killer, known as Yersinia pestis, was sweeping across Europe with a speed that defied comprehension. Ships were drifting into Mediterranean harbors with entire crews dead at the wheel. Within 48 hours of infection, victims developed agonizing, basketball-sized swellings in their lymph nodes, known as buboes. Within 5 days, their lungs liquefied, their skin turned black from internal hemorrhaging, and they were dead. In less than 7 years, the Black Death wiped out between 30 and 60% of the entire population of Europe. In bustling metropolitan hubs like Florence and London, more than half of all residents perished in under 24 months. Mass graves at East Smithfield were dug deep into the earth, stacked high with thousands of bodies buried in layers of lime. Entire bloodlines were erased in 48 hours. Feudal society completely collapsed under the weight of an unprecedented demographic void. It was the most intense evolutionary bottleneck in recorded human history. Yet amid the absolute horror, a strange anomaly occurred. A tiny fraction of citizens walked through infected streets, breathing the contaminated air and handling plague victims, without ever showing a single symptom. They walked away completely unharmed. Was it sheer luck? Was it divine favor? Or did their cells possess an invisible shield that kept the bacterial monster at bay? For 7 centuries, that question remained unanswered. History recorded the bodies, but science could not read the ghost inside their blood. Then, in October of 2022, a multi-institutional team of geneticists decided to dig up the teeth of the dead. To uncover the truth, scientists traveled to mass plague graves across London and Denmark. They excavated more than 500 skeletons buried across 3 distinct historical timeframes: people who died right before the pandemic arrived, victims buried in the emergency plague pits of 1348, and survivors buried generations after the crisis had passed. Why teeth? When a person dies of a blood-borne pathogen, blood pools inside the pulp chamber of their teeth. The hard enamel shell acts as a biological time capsule, protecting ancient DNA from thermal decay and moisture for hundreds of years. Scientists meticulously extracted tiny fragments of 700-year-old human DNA from these teeth. They sequenced the genomes of the dead and lined them up side by side to track how human genetics changed before, during, and after the massacre. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the scientific community. They didn't just see subtle genetic shifts. They witnessed an explosion of rapid natural selection happening in real time. The researchers calculated a selection coefficient of 0.04. In the slow-moving world of evolutionary biology, where genetic adaptations usually take tens of thousands of years to crawl forward, this was blinding speed. It was 4 times faster than any standard evolutionary change ever recorded in human history. The human genome had literally been rewritten across just 3 generations. As scientists mapped the genomic shift, they kept coming back to one specific gene candidate located on chromosome 5, a gene called ERAP2. The data showed that if an individual inherited 2 functional copies of this protective gene variant from their parents, their chances of surviving the Black Death spiked by a staggering 40%. It was the difference between life and death during the darkest catastrophe humanity had ever faced. Inside the human body, the ERAP2 gene acts as a ruthless molecular butcher. When a lethal pathogen like Yersinia pestis breaks past your skin, ERAP2 inside immune cells goes to work. It grabs the invading bacteria, chops its proteins into tiny recognizable fragments, and displays those fragments on the outside of the cell. This process alerts T cells, the primary assassins of the human immune system. The T cells immediately recognize the foreign pattern, mobilize an army of white blood cells, and annihilate the bacterial infection before it can multiply and destroy human tissue. Before 1346, the human population carried a chaotic mix of functional and non-functional ERAP2 genes. But the Black Death acted as a massive biological filter. Individuals with weak, non-functional variants of ERAP2 died by the millions, taking their defective genes to the grave before they could reproduce. Meanwhile, the individuals carrying 2 functional copies of ERAP2 survived, reclaimed the empty cities, and passed that hyper-efficient immune defense down to their children. Natural selection aggressively altered baseline human immunity forever. For decades, popular culture and outdated textbooks credited a completely different genetic mutation for plague survival, a gene variant called CCR5 delta 32, famous for offering natural resistance to HIV. Many believed the Black Death created that mutation, but modern ancient DNA mapping completely debunked that myth. Ancient teeth proved that CCR5 delta 32 was either already present thousands of years earlier or selected by a completely different pathogen. The true architect of human survival in 1348 was ERAP2. Yet as geneticists celebrated solving one of history's greatest medical mysteries, they stumbled directly into a disturbing biological paradox. If this hyper-efficient ERAP2 gene variant was the ultimate shield against deadly pathogens, why didn't every single human survivor retain it? Why did modern genetic databases show that millions of people today still carry the weaker, non-functional version of the gene? If evolution favors the strong, why didn't the protective version completely replace the weak one over the last 700 years? What hidden biological tax was hiding inside that genetic victory? The answer came when scientists cross-referenced the ancient plague data with modern medical records. The result was a shocking realization. The exact same hyperactive ERAP2 variant that saved your ancestors from dying of bubonic plague in 1348 is directly responsible for destroying human health in the 21st century. In the filthy, bacterial-ridden world of the 14th century, a hyper-aggressive, paranoid immune system was essential. Your ancestors needed immune cells that would attack violently at the slightest sign of a foreign protein. Without that over-the-top cellular response, Yersinia pestis would liquefy their lungs before their bodies even realized they were sick. Fast forward 700 years. We live in sanitized homes. We drink chlorinated water, eat pasteurized food, and treat minor infections with sterile antibiotics. The terrifying bacterial killers of the Middle Ages are largely absent from daily life. But inside the bodies of millions of modern humans, that ancient biological armor is still switched on. The hyperactive ERAP2 protein is still standing guard, waiting for a monster that never comes. And in the absence of deadly medieval bacteria, it begins to hallucinate enemies. It takes harmless proteins from the food you eat, or normal tissues inside your own body, chops them up, and presents them to your T cells as an immediate threat. Your immune system launches a full-scale military strike against healthy tissue. If this hyperactive system targets your digestive tract, you develop Crohn's disease. If it targets your joints, you suffer from rheumatoid arthritis. If it attacks your blood vessels and organs, you develop lupus. The very same genetic shield that saved human lineages from total extinction 7 centuries ago is now causing human bodies to attack themselves in modern, pathogen-scarce environments. Your vulnerability to autoimmune disorders today is not a mistake. It is not a failure of your body, nor is it merely a consequence of modern lifestyle choices. It is the lingering biological price paid for your bloodline surviving the deadliest pandemic in human history. Evolution is not an engineer striving for long-term perfection. It is a crude, reactive process that cares about only one thing: keeping an organism alive long enough to reproduce today, regardless of the consequences for tomorrow. In 1348, the price of surviving the weak was an elevated risk of chronic disease. 700 years later, humanity took that deal because there was no other choice. Our modern baseline immunity is not an optimized biological design. It is a battlefield scar left behind by an ancient war between tiny bacteria and human survival. Every human being alive today of European or West Eurasian descent is a walking survivor of history's most ruthless biological filter. You are here because, when the world was dying around them, your ancestors carried a bloodline strong enough to endure the darkness. We carry the ancient shield that saved our ancestors from the grave, along with the heavy biological cost they paid to hand it down to us. History isn't just written in textbook pages or buried beneath old city streets. It lives, breathes, and fights inside your cells every single day. So the next time your body struggles, remember you aren't broken. You are simply carrying the heavy biological shield of history. If this story changed the way you view your own blood and history, hit the like button and subscribe. It tells the algorithm to share deep science with more minds. Drop a comment below. Did you know your immune system was forged in a 700-year-old plague? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next deep dive.